happy 10th birthday iPhone again. Artificial intelligence to combat hate and exploding fidget spinners. All that and so much more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1800, recorded Thursday, June 29th, 2017. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage just for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/TNT. And by Blue Apron, the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. See what's on the menu this week and get 3 meals free with your first purchase and free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. Hello and welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we tell you everything you need to know about the news that happened today. I am Megan Maroney. Jason has jury duty, but joining me today is Lisa Schmeiser, editor-in-chief at the Super Site for Windows, podcaster at The Incomparable, and columnist for The Observer. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Mm-hmm. Hi, thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's so nice to have you. We met just a few weeks ago on one of Jason Snell's podcasts, and I was so excited to talk to you. The download, you can get that wherever you get podcasts. And so I'm super excited to talk about all of the news. So
yeah, we nerded out over retail last time, so I'm looking forward to today's.
We'll have a little Amazon talk, but we'll talk about the rest of the news too. Today marks the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. If you, like me, think it feels like we just celebrated the 10th anniversary, you'd be right. On January 7th of this year, we celebrated the birth of the iPhone because that's when Steve Jobs stood on stage and announced it. But today is the day you could wait in line at a store to buy one 10 years ago today. So we're celebrating again. And we should, no matter how you feel about Apple or the sheeple who follow the company. You cannot deny that any product has sold more than 1 billion units is not worth talking about. Even though there are a lot more Android phones out there than there are iPhones, the iPhone is possibly the best-selling product ever, anywhere. So what are your thoughts on the iPhone's anniversary, Lisa?
The hype is a little overwhelming, to be honest with you. It sort of feels like the people who drag out pregnancy from the pea stick reveal on social media to the gender reveal with balloons and stunt animals to everything else. So not a big fan of the hype. That said, I don't think you can actually talk too much about the impact that the smartphone, or more specifically, the iPhone has had on so many industries and so many facets of global culture in the past 10 years. So not a fan of the hype, big fan of the phone.
Well, you said, you tweeted today that you didn't really, the iPhone didn't really cleave to you, which I thought was a great verb to use, until you had a newborn. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure thing. I got an iPhone. We got our first ones, I think, as a family. We got out of our old cell phone contracts and got our first iPhones in, I want to say 2008, possibly 2009. And I didn't really see the point to them other than snapping photos here and there. In 2010, I had a baby who slept very poorly. And for the first few months of her life, she would only sleep on me. And so for many, many hours a day, I was either feeding this baby, rocking this baby, or pinned under her while she was sleeping. And that phone became my tether to the outside world. I had other friends who had babies about the same time, so we would text each other at 3 a.m. with plaintive queries like, am I ever sleeping again? There was an app on the phone that let me track my baby's feedings and the input and output, basically, so that you can go to your doctor and reliably report on how the kid is doing. And I could read my Kindle books on the phone too. So again, trapped under baby for hours. It was easy enough to scroll through. And I think I read about 50 books in the first 6 weeks, just because, I had nothing else to do other than take care of tiny person. So, and take tons of photos. And so by the time, we got to the point where she's in a crib and I was going back to work, the phone was the first piece of technology I reached for everything from taking photos to taking notes to looking things up to recording things for later. So that was the use case that really turned me into a smartphone consumer. And I think it's that way for a lot of different people with different types of use cases. You may have had people who discovered the phone is a great place to store recipes. I know lots of people who use their phones to snap photos of where their car is in parking garages. My mom and several of her senior citizen friends actually use it that way, where they take photos to fortify their memories when they travel someplace and go on their girls' trips together. And the fact that we've moved to that sort of information capture so effortlessly, I think, is really interesting. And again, it's something that was brought about because of the phone, which, it's not even about talking on the phone. It's about having this tiny portable information recording and information accessing device in your pocket.
Exactly. And so as your daughter's gotten, I assume she's around 7 now, yeah. And I assume she doesn't have a phone yet, but I don't know.
No.
And does she want one? Do you see how it's like affecting her at all yet, or do you not see much of that yet?
So I'm one of those no fun people, or I should say I'm a hypocrite when it comes to screen time, because she gets about 3 days a week where I let her to have access to screens. She's aware that you can use the phone to talk to people, but for her, the phone is also, she's aware, if we're waiting at a restaurant, she's like, can I play a game on your phone? Or can you look that up? What she's most interested in, honestly, is Siri, where if we have a question and her father, or I don't know the answer off the top of my head, she's like, can you ask Siri? So that's what it's there for. But what's interesting is, from her perspective, there's never been a world where somebody hasn't been holding a device that can tell you where you are, tell you how to go someplace, entertain you, help you look things up, or take pictures. Like, she literally cannot conceive of a world where all of those things are not possible the very minute you want to do them.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should call ourselves hypocrites for limiting our children's screen time, because unless we also want to call Steve Jobs a hypocrite, because of course he famously didn't let his children have iPads when he was alive. So.
Well, because you've got a child too, right? But I mean, she's older.
I have 3 children, and the 12-year-olds just got iPhones, and I wish they didn't have them.
Because I've noticed a big difference in behavior between screen time days and no screen time days. And so that was something else to take a look at too, is how does this kind of digital gratification affect your ability to entertain yourself, to sustain attention, to be able to switch tasks, things like that. And watching my daughter's shifted moods and her ability to cope with things after, excessive amounts of screen time, which she has had on occasion, it's forced me to look more at my own habits too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so another thing about this celebration and the hype is, you always see people talking about Steve Jobs and, how wonderful he is. And I've been reading Brian Merchant's book, The One Device, the secret history of the iPhone. I'm going to have a chance to talk to him on Monday on Triangulation. And he really goes through all the other people that were involved in the creation of the iPhone. It's amazing. I mean, it's just, we do think about this one creator myth, but there's so many other people involved.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I don't know what it says about corporate culture where we're able to identify top executives, but we have very little idea who came up with the game-changing ideas behind some of our favorite products, or perhaps more importantly, who came up with the practical implementation of these ideas, or the ability to nail down the supply chain. One of the things I read about the iPhone recently, which really stuck with me, was it wasn't just a revolution in consumer behavior. What the iPhone also did was it revolutionized supply chains and manufacturing. And we really shouldn't ignore how it revolutionized the Chinese tech industry, because those companies over there learned tremendous lessons about recruiting, retaining talent. They learned great lessons about how to modify and streamline design processes and manufacturing processes. They learned how to put a really tight control on leaks and corporate information. And those are all developments that are going to ripple across other industries, the same way that as a consumer device, the iPhone had a material impact on the camera industry, the music industry, the map making industry, and a whole lot of others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure the hype will continue on and on and on, and soon there will be the 10th anniversary of the iPad and then the Apple Watch, and we'll talk about them all again.
Yep.
My mother used to always tell me that if you didn't have anything nice to say, not to say anything at all, and that maternal wisdom sadly rarely works online. So Instagram has turned to artificial intelligence. Today, the Facebook-owned company announced a new system to filter out hateful comments, and it's called Deep Text. It goes beyond filtering keywords, and it's designed to understand the context of the comment and decide whether it's toxic or benign. It will launch first in English and later in other languages, and the company says it's already being used to combat Instagram spam. This will be turned on by default. What do you make of the fact, because they've had keyword filtering before, but it's been something you had to turn on?
I feel like they're using the magic bullet context here, where they're like, no, trust us, it's context specific, so we're totally not going to delete any comments that are about breastfeeding anymore. We hope. That's one of the most famous examples of the pitfalls of keyword filtering things, is because people don't always talk about breast cancer or nursing with, clinically appropriate terms. There's slang involved. And you used to have social media sites just like wholesale block this content and be like, it's a nipple, we can't handle it. When people are like, no, I'm feeding a baby. Or no, I just got a mastectomy. So again, I feel like context is the magic word here. What I would like more transparency on is how they trained the technology. Like, how did you define the context? How did you train it? How did you test it? What did you do about exceptions? More importantly, how do you detect exceptions? How are you going to iterate? Because there are going to be situations that this technology hasn't run into. So how is it learning about the stuff it hasn't run into? How does it process it, sort it, categorize it, and then implement it? This is something that actually, I wouldn't say bugs me about AI in general, but I think the company that's going to be transparent about machine learning in the process, if they do it right, they could gain a significant mind share, because people are going to want to know, it's artificial intelligence. Really? Well, how does it work? What's the input? Is there a way we can teach it to be better and smarter? And this just feels really opaque.
It does. I mean, Wired had a great piece about how they did it. They had people working on it, obviously, also machine learning. They analyzed 2 million comments. But at the same time, does this make you worry about just the ability of technology to be able to understand context and filter comments? What if it decided to filter negative comments about Facebook or Instagram?
Oh, yeah. No, I'd be absolutely controlled. Well, first, there's the whole, it's going to filter out negative comments that are based on the service itself. The other thing I'd be worried about would be, again, artificial intelligence and machine learning is only as good as the raw data that gets fed into it. And that raw data is largely decided by people who make decisions about the data pool, what goes in and what stays out. Those people bring their own biases, examined or unexamined, into a situation. So those biases are going to play out in different ways. Or more darkly, somebody may design, we want our site to be a really happy place, so we're going to make, climate change a block term because we don't want that kind of debate on our pictures of sunsets. And then what you've done is you've basically, put forth a very specific political position, whether or not you meant to, but you've put forth that position and made that platform a safe place for people who hold one side, but not for the other side. So, again, I'm kind of creeped out. This reminds me a little bit of the Facebook story that came out yesterday with ProPublica, where ProPublica talked about the terms of the criteria that Facebook's content screeners look at. And, if they're a member of this protected class, then we are absolutely going to censor content or that makes fun of them. But if they're not a member of this class, then we're totally fine with it. And the upshot is that using these if-then rules, which came from a very rigid engineering mindset, Facebook had effectively codified a set of moderation rules that said, you can't make fun of white people. But if they're Black children, that's totally okay, because it's okay to make fun. And again, you can almost understand the underlying logic where it's like, children are not on a protected class, so it's okay. But what that illustrates is that when you try to put if-then rules into effect, there are always going to be paths where they'll break free of the context, or the context makes the rule invalid. And those are the really weird and dangerous exceptions.
When I think about internet filtering, it often reminds me of just the way that it's paternal. It's very paternal. So I think this makes sense that I think about the way that, I monitor my own children. There's so much that I don't understand. I'll, look through my daughter's phone with her because that is the best way to do it. Because if you look at it other than when they're around, it will just make absolutely no sense to you. I mean, they her and her best friends are calling each other names and I just, you say, are you in a fight? Like, no, that's the language that we use with each other. And so that's the same thing. I think there's going to be all kinds of groups of people that there's I can't understand my own daughter's language. How is a machine supposed to, a machine created by a certain type of person be able to understand the way all groups of people speak to each other?
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't call it the problem, but you have to understand the underlying premise of any sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence is it's only going to be as smart as its data pool. And that data pool is only as good as the people who decided what go in the pool. So unless you have people who have made a concerted effort to break outside their own context bubbles and they're transparent about what their own bubbles are, what their own assumptions are, you can't trust the data and you can't trust what's learned from the data. So that's something I think we're going to have to grapple with very much over the next few years. There's a big difference between shopping recommendations, which can be reasonably inferred from things you've expressed an interest in or clicked back on and so on and so forth, and what constitutes inflammatory comments or incendiary language.
Exactly. Well, Carmel Demikis has a great piece in Marie Claire magazine about the women behind the Amazon Echo. Now, you and I discussed Amazon at length on Jason Snell's podcast, The Download, and we talked about how many psychologists Amazon had on staff. And it turns out Tony Reed, who joined the Alexa team as its director in 2014, has a BA in anthropology. But according to Demikis, Reed is seen as a, quote, customer oracle with an uncanny ability to predict users' wants and needs. Many of the leaders of the Amazon Echo team are female. And I'm curious what you think about that in terms of the product success.
So I didn't know that until you told me. And I was looking at this in prep for the show. Part of me is like, well, it doesn't surprise me. No, there was something on Twitter yesterday where somebody was like, the problem with female tech journalists, because there's always a problem with female tech journalists. The problem with female tech journalists is they just don't express opinions. And I thought that's not true. A lot of them talk about products and express opinions all the time. They just do it in contexts that may be slightly different than the approach that we were trained to associate with tech journalism from the 80s on, which is this very gearhead, very functional look. What the Amazon Echo does well, and it's insanely smart about it, is it didn't position itself as, oh, look at this magnificent technology. Won't you just love this technology and this voice recognition? Oh, it's so great. But rather it was like, this will help you do stuff. And that is an appeal that's perfectly positioned for people who are more or less tech agnostic and just want to, again, do stuff. Where I think the gender might come into play is in most domestic situations. If there is a woman in the house, she is usually the one who is going to be responsible for the household logistics. And so if you've got a bunch of people like that in a room, they're going to be able to say, okay, what does this product do? Does this product solve my problem? Does this product do this? Does this product do that? I mean, I'm happy to give you some examples of Internet of Things products that I've run into across CES where like the exact opposite approach was taken and the products are designed by all dudes. And when I talked to them about it, there was a big gap between what they thought their product should do versus how it was actually going to be used by real people. So this episode doesn't have that.
I think I think that makes sense. I think that, this was the idea of the Amazon Echo is it's something that's going to be part of your house and it's going to be, probably in the kitchen, maybe in the family room. And you're right. If there is a woman in the house, she will probably be making a lot of those decisions. Yeah. And I think it's, she also said that there's a person in charge of the emotional response that Alexa evokes in users. And I thought that was really something too, because I guess probably there's someone in charge of the emotional response that Siri invokes in users. But when you have a device like the Echo, that they really want people to use to buy their products, buy their, their home products. That's going to be something that we're going to have to feel, like women are going to have to feel that it's comfortable in their house. And I'm not to say that like Amazon is this wonderful place for women to work. There's still only 25% of Amazon's managers are women. That's small. It's bigger than some places, but it's still small. But it does make sense in this device that really is designed to make people's lives simpler.
Well, it might actually be, and again, I'm not suggesting this is an explicitly female experience, but having somebody who's there just to focus on the emotional response that a piece of technology gives you, that's a pretty Disney-esque approach. And again, if you are somebody who is responsible for children in any way, shape, or form, you've probably spent a lot of time around Disney, willingly or not. And, if you have a certain way of looking at the world, you're going to be like, how do they engineer this so that it's so compulsive and addictive for my kid? How did they build this out? Why does my kid respond this way? Or why do adults respond this way? And why, if you're the person who's thinking that, like, why wouldn't you bring that to the product you're working on? Especially if you are also working on a team where the goal for Alexa is to help it move product. I mean, it's a useful assistant and things like that, but it's also there to help you use Amazon more and to buy more stuff. And so people who are focused on retail are going to be like, okay, how can we make this feel like a really positive, helpful experience all the way down? It's got to be a positive experience.
And yet they also made some missteps with the calling, the Amazon calling or Echo calling, where you couldn't block a phone number. You couldn't. So anyone who was in your list of contacts could call you, and so that's not necessarily a thing that a woman of my age is really concerned with. I don't have a lot of former stalkers trying to get it in. But a younger person might have that problem, male or female. So they haven't, they haven't been perfect. And I know Matt Honan, who reviewed the Echo Show or the Amazon Show, he said, there were some missteps there too, like the song lyrics come up and, one of his kids saw like the F word or something. Well, IoT in general is not set up or equipped to handle any domestic situation that is dysfunctional, period. Again, one of the times when I was at CES and talking to smart lock makers, one of them said with eager enthusiasm, and the good news is you can control this lock from your smartphone, so you can decide who gets to enter and who gets to leave and what times of the day they get to enter and they get to leave, and you can track their comings and goings to make sure everything's okay. And I said, so if you are an abuser who wants to make sure that your partner isn't going anywhere, what you can do is you can literally make sure that they're locked out of the house unless you decide otherwise. And the guy just kind of went, we wouldn't encourage that. But it literally had not occurred to him that using surveillance technology to deter when people are allowed to enter and leave their own house is a use of technology that he had just created and midwifed. And that happens with a lot of IoT stuff. And I think this is going to be something that any company, including Amazon, is going to be ironing out for quite a while, is the realization that they have to build technology that is flexible enough for people to incorporate into their daily life, but in ways that ideally can't be used to hurt or control other people in the same house. Well, our next story is also technology that might be used to hurt or control people. Alphabet is rolling out Google Photos 3.0, now with more facial recognition. The new features announced at Google I/O back in May include machine learning that nudges you to share pictures if you forget. Google also says they'll recognize meaningful moments and suggest who you might want to share them with. You can now share with friends and family, even if they don't use Google Photos. This will be so useful and also so creepy, because imagine what Google will do with this information. Do you put your photos in Google Photos?
No. Oh. And I got to tell you, I sat through the I/O keynote and they rolled this out, and all I could think was, this is going to get super ugly the first time a couple divorces, because then who gets access to the assets? And do you have to negotiate over everyone's assets and who gets tagged and who doesn't and who gets shared? It's just so many headaches, so many ugly situations that I can see coming up from it.
Well, does it? I mean, it's your point about it doesn't, IoT doesn't work for any sort of dysfunctional situation. And I mean, I think, is not productive of us to always be referring to the small number of people that this might upset? Or, I mean, I guess no one deserves to be upset by, their Google photos. But, I mean, will it, like, my point is, it's going to be incredibly helpful for me, of course, until, God forbid I get divorced or something like that. But, I mean, what do you say about that?
I think I'm coming from an approach where the goal for the technology should be to do the least amount of harm and provide the most amount of autonomy to anyone who's affected by it. And to be honest, this idea of what happens when a household splits up, or even what happens when a kid goes off to college, what do you do about digital media then? I mean, that's something I'm kind of interested in, because I think we're still working out a lot of those questions with regards to things like digital photos. Who do you give login information to? Stuff like that. And I don't think you should be, say, blocking or prohibiting technologies based on worst case scenarios. But I also think that when you're developing them, it doesn't hurt to think of the worst case scenarios and say, okay, what have we put in place for this? Let's say we do get contacted by somebody who's livid and upset, and their ex has just completely blanked a library they used to have access to. Those are the only pictures they have of their kid. Do we just say, sorry, you should have picked ex-partners better? I'm not sure a lot of these companies have fully thought through all of the human scenarios or put into place a humane support structure for those outlying cases when people who will need the most hands-on help in navigating a tricky situation may not be able to find it.
Yeah, I think that is exactly right. Just putting in the system so, you can turn this off. And makes me think of Eric Meyer, who's the web developer who wrote, it was a couple years ago, because his daughter died of cancer. And then he kept getting these Facebook reminders, these pictures of her.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
You had, this was your amazing year. And like a picture of her in the hospital showed up.
Yeah,
and so he wrote a piece and he had a voice. People listened to him, and Facebook has fixed that. I do have a good friend who died of cancer, and his widow is able to turn that off. He doesn't, it doesn't show up anymore. So like Facebook heard someone, and it took someone like Eric Meyer, who's, well known in the web community, to say, hey, like, this hurts, and you should do the least amount of harm. So give people the ability to turn this off, but we can still have it a feature.
It all goes back to that contextual learning that we're talking about, where the data pool is only as strong as the data that goes into it. And that in turn is only as good as the quality of the assumptions that have shaped the collation of sources, and then how those sources are used and deployed. And the Facebook example is a good one, because I'm sure people at Facebook didn't mean to hurt anybody, but it probably didn't occur to them that when they do this, here is your year and here's the piano music, that you were going to have people who did get confronted with some of the worst moments of their life brought back up again and set to music. That was not what it's not what they intended to do, but there was probably nobody who thought that, this is the kind of stuff people post. And I'm not sure why they didn't know that's what people post, but the fact is that they didn't know it. It was a knowledge gap that they had, and therefore it affected the tools they were able to put out.
Well, quick reminder, if you want to comment on anything we discuss, you can email tnt@twit.tv, and of course, subscribe to Tech News Today by going to our show page at twit.tv/TNT. After the break, we will talk about what automation is doing to the trucking industry. But first, let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage, the sponsor of this episode. The mortgage experience was not keeping up with the times. It was dated, and it needed a client-focused technological revolution. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple. It allows you to fully understand every last detail, and then you can have the confidence that you're getting the right mortgage just for you. It's also very convenient. Their trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. Whatever button you have on your iPad, on your Surface, on your computer, if you have a button, you can share that information. It's powerful. So if you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th home, Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations about your specific financial information in just seconds. Based on your income, your assets, and your credit, Rocket Mortgage can analyze all of the home loan options that you qualify for, and then they'll find the one that is just right, tailored just for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/TNT. That's rocketmortgage.com/TNT. Don't forget to add the TNT out there at the end. That way they know that we sent you to them. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support of Tech News Today. I know many of you who listen to us are part of the trucking industry. One listener, John, has written to me a few times when we've discussed Uber's self-driving truck ambitions or other ways automation is affecting the industry. John wrote to me today with a story from livetrucking.com about how Walmart has reportedly demanded that for-hire drivers and contract companies cut ties with Amazon if they want to continue driving for Walmart. Now, Lisa, you've covered the changes to the trucking industry in your newsletter, So What, Who Cares? What do you make of this?
It's not surprising. Walmart is known for locking down almost every step of its supply chain. For example, they've also advised that people who work with them don't use Amazon Web Services. So, they're pretty detail oriented and careful about this. It puts the truckers and the trucking chains in a tough spot because they're going to have to choose one company over the other. And the drivers are the ones who are ultimately going to be affected by this decision.
Yeah, I mean, John, you sent me a few articles that you'd been looking at, and John was, I sent them to him too, and he was saying, this is totally true. Like a lot of it. And what's interesting to me is that we think about Uber drivers, like we've covered news stories about Uber drivers who have to lease their car and they don't end up getting enough money. And we're really, I think that we've come in contact with them because so many people use these ride hailing services, and you can talk to your Uber driver. We don't think, we, obviously every day our whole lives, especially you and I who get so much stuff from Amazon, are affected by truckers getting things here and there, but we don't really think about them. We're not hailing trucks. We're not, talking to the drivers. But this is really brought into the forefront that really a lot of truckers have to maintain their trucks as well. Yes,
it's a business model I don't think a lot of white collar people are well acquainted with, which is that you put up a pretty significant amount of cash because you've got to lease the equipment. If you don't own it outright, you've got to pay for your own training, and then you've got to be able to build the business connections to do the job. And overall, it's a tough job. Trucking is a tough job. It can be lonely. It's physically demanding, and the exploitation is ripe too. So it's a job where right now there's actually a lot more demand than there are drivers who are willing to do the work right now. I was at a business journalism awards luncheon back in March, and I was sitting next to the editor-in-chief of a trucking industry publication, and I was super curious what this guy who's been covering trucking for 30 odd years thought about automation, because this is right when the Waymo stuff was beginning to blow up, and everyone's like, oh, trucking soon the robots will be driving the trucks. I said, so what do you think about that? Is automation something you've actually been covering? And is this something where truck drivers are going to have to worry about losing their job, because that's a ripple effect across the economy? In a lot of states in this country, truck driver is actually, like the most common job. For example, if you take a look in California, there was a breakdown at NPR where vast swaths of the country, truck driver is the most common job for that state when you look at the employment rules. And the dude at the lunch said, no, I'm not worried about robots. There will always be a demand for trucking, and there is still enough stuff that requires specialized skill. Our biggest problem, it comes down to labor shortages. So what I'm interested in seeing is whether or not his beat on it is going to be correct, especially as Amazon begins ramping up its own transit infrastructure to try to break free of FedEx and UPS and to try to optimize its own supply chain from warehouse to endpoint.
Yeah, it's that last mile, right? They're trying to solve the last mile problem because it's so expensive for them. And then I guess a few days ago, Target announced that they would have a delivery service where, it's like Amazon Prime, but it comes from your local Target. So that's not going to be a trucker's job to get it to me. So, whoever, like whatever in toilet paper and paper towels and razors that I was getting from Amazon Prime, if I get them from my local Target, that's, another job that is taken.
Although I got to be honest with you, I had a terrible Target.com e-commerce experience just like a month and a half ago. And I now have given them a heavy side eye because I've ordered from Target.com 3 times. I've never had a good experience there. And the one thing Amazon and Amazon Prime has going for it is they have a crazy high rate of delivering what you want when you want it to your door. And after my last experience with Target.com, where I did order it for in-store pickup, and they shipped me the wrong thing twice. And what I wanted was a 9-foot by 12-foot rug. So it's not like that was something you could just toss in a car and take and oh, it's all right, it works out. I think that Amazon will probably over the next few years double down the look, we drop this stuff off at home. But I think what they're also going to do is try to get more aggressive about the gig economy, where it's like, hey, person, how would you like to get a tiny discount on your next Amazon order if you drop off this package where you're out and about? Sort of a TaskRabbit/Uber-y thing where it gets other people to do the work for them instead of them having to build out a last mile infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about self-driving, there's like all the levels of self-driving, and we're pretty far still from full automation. So I mean, do you have any idea of how long it will be that, there'll just be increased safety features? Drivers can take a nap in the back of the truck, whatever, but they'll still be needed.
I kind of love the idea of the naps in back of the trucks. I don't have a good timeline just because I haven't studied it that closely. If I'm given to understand, truckers already have a lot of technology augmenting their jobs now when it comes to safety maps, things like that. And they've got all sorts of tech that's quietly monitoring what they do. So, I'm using a lot of words to say, no, I don't know what the timeline is. I'd be surprised, though, if it was anything longer than 7 to 10 years at the most. Well, this is not just, it's not just what is the technology problem. When I've talked to companies I've talked to automakers and companies, one of the things that they bring up over and over again is that before you have self-driving trucks and cars, you have to have roads that these vehicles are capable of driving on. And American infrastructure spending American infrastructure spending versus American infrastructure needs, there's a little bit of a gap between them. And the quality of America's roads has to change and has to improve before you can reliably unleash like the tractor trailer that's convoying behind a human-driven truck, and one of the trucks is robot-operated. So there's spending, and then there will probably be a boatload of state and federal regulations that will have to be negotiated or even conceived of, because you may have some states that are like, no, we don't want the robot drivers. We don't think they're safe. Or you'll have others that are really pushing it because they have an industry base there where they're lobbying for it too. It's not just a matter of, the technology is here, now let's use it. It's going to also be, are the roads here? And is this the kind of thing where you're going to get into trouble with the law or not? And all of those things have to come together. And I think it's the non-technology factors that will actually be the limiting drag on this whole thing.
I thought where we were going, we wouldn't need roads.
Very nice.
After the break, it's TWIFs this week in fidget spinners. But first, let's take a minute to thank Blue Apron, the sponsor of this episode. Cooking together builds strong family bonds. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone while supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. We got our Blue Apron box yesterday, and my sister is here with her family. They're visiting, which is great. Now we'll make both meals and save the time that we would have spent shopping. That's more time together, and it's cheaper and a lot more fun than dragging the kids to a restaurant. For less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients to make a delicious home-cooked meal in 40 minutes or less. There's no weekly commitment. Skip weeks you don't want the meals, you can do that. And then just jump back on the Blue Apron train. You only get deliveries when you want them. Customize your recipes every week based on your dietary preferences. We're picky, we all are. You get to look at the pictures of the meals and choose which ones seem right for you and your family. Choose from a variety of new recipes each week or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Upcoming meals include seared chicken and creamy pasta salad with summer squash and sweet peppers, creamy shrimp rolls with quick pickles and sweet potato wedges, fresh basil fettuccine pasta with sweet corn and cubanelle pepper, chili butter steaks with Parmesan potatoes and spinach. Blue Apron has established partnerships with over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the United States. By shipping the exact amount of each ingredient required for a recipe, Blue Apron is reducing food waste, and their freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they will make it right. Check out this week's menu and get 3 meals free with your first purchase and free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. Don't wait. Go to blueapron.com/TNT. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. We got some feedback. Katie writes, I just listened to the episode where Megan expressed suspicions about the possibility of our devices actually listening to us in order to direct appropriate advertising. I, too, had heard this and felt a conspiracy theory brewing until it started happening to me via Facebook. For example, a coworker and I were discussing a very specific children's book that she had planned on buying for her niece's birthday that allows you to customize the book using the child's name. I do not have children, and I had not searched for anything child-related on my phone or my computer, and I thought about this extensively, yet Facebook advertised the same exact book we were discussing later that day. I know Facebook has publicly announced that they aren't listening to their members, and I like to think larger companies are at least forced into being somewhat ethical and honest when it comes to these things, but the instances tend to be just too specific to always be coincidental. So, Lisa, do you think Facebook is somehow listening to us?
So I'm going through this story and I'm trying to figure out how that would work. Does she have Facebook on her phone and the app is open? Is she suggesting that her phone or her computer are somehow passively recording her and that Facebook has access to these passive recordings somehow? Basically, I'm not clear because she doesn't suggest how Facebook could have gotten this information.
I think she thinks they're just listening, like on the, just how, well, I mean, how Google is always listening, right? Like listening for the wake word on your Android phone, or
which you cannot say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my question is what hardware would Facebook be using to listen with? And where did this happen? Did this happen in Office? Because if that's the case, then what's the hardware node or hub point there? What I'm also curious about is if this is a very specific children's book that you can customize, what are the odds that this book has an advertising campaign on social media that's pegged to specific users based on things they've posted, or something like that? I mean, there's the demographic odds there too. Basically, I'm hung up on how Facebook gets the raw data for listening and then magically spits stuff out at you in like an under 24-hour period. Like, I want to know how that works, because then my next question is, why aren't they using it to sell intelligence to the government or to many governments? Because that's just like a crazy great, crazy efficient, crazy smart way of taking information and deploying it for profit and or evil.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would almost be better if they were just listening to us. Like, it'd be more simple to think that than the fact that we're really handing so much of this data away. Like, it's possible, I think, that this book was advertised on Facebook to this woman, and that's how she saw about it, her friend. And then because the friend clicked on it, then that advertiser or Facebook might think, okay, well, this closest friend of this person probably would want this book too. And so, and sometimes it's, you see like so-and-so liked this, when you see the advertising, it's like all your friends have liked it and you see it as an ad to you. So I would think that, I mean, that is almost more scary to me, just all the ways that they insidiously get into us, as opposed to just sticking a secret microphone in,
It's the tracking cookies that creep me right out, because there was one time when I was on Nordstrom looking at a pair of shoes just for the heck of it. And when I popped onto Facebook, they were like, we saw that you liked, there was an advertisement, which was like, why don't you pick up these shoes from Nordstrom? We saw that you really like these shoes. And I thought, okay, that's creepy, because first of all, I don't want Facebook knowing that I went to Nordstrom. And second of all, I don't want them knowing I like those shoes. And yet they were able to, through tracking cookies, probably put down by an advertising network, they were able to pull up very specific ads that were based on my past web surfing. And when I go to the Washington Post, it actually does that based on recent visits to J.Crew, which I also find incredibly creepy, because the ad is, you've got good taste. And then it posts the picture of the shirt I was looking at. And I'm all, I never want to go to J.Crew again, because now I know that what I look at follows me all over the web to sites that are wholly unrelated to a retailer. And yet here it is. So I find that deeply creepy. I am intrigued by the idea that Facebook is somehow listening to our conversations and turning it into ad sale opportunities, but I'm not clear how that would work.
Well, TNT's fan of the day is front-end developer and web designer Diablahu on Twitter, who says he watches TNT on his trip to Vietnam. It looks like he's watching on his Surface on the beach. Diablahu. Diablahu, Burke says that's how you pronounce it. Looks pretty nice there. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT and we are going to find it. And finally, this is the part of the show where we talk about fidget spinner news. According to Gizmodo, at least 2 people have been the victim of exploding fidget spinners. Apparently, the devices stopped just short of burning the house down. Not from spinning too fast, but they apparently had internal batteries that were designed to power Bluetooth speakers. The rest is a story you've heard before about exploding batteries. Lisa, do you have fidget spinners in your house?
We don't, and I am the house's inveterate fidgeter, so I think the reason we don't have them is to protect us all from me.
I just love this because it was like, you know, the comparisons between fidget spinners and the
Samsung Galaxy's head?
Yeah, the phone or the, you know, the, what were those things that everybody wanted that you, like the hollow.
Oh, the hoverboards.
Hoverboards, yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were so quickly coming from China, like the fidget spinners, and, you know, then they're going to explode. But why do you need batteries in a fidget spinner? Like that seems to be beyond the point.
No, we got fascinated. My daughter, when we do have our screen time, we like to watch YouTube together. And I like it because this way I can keep track of where she's clicking in. We don't end up accidentally clicking on some sort of nightmare fuel. And she's really gotten into this one channel where a British gentleman makes his own fidget spinners out of tungsten and celly putty. And so that is like as close as we've gotten in our house. And I now kind of want a fidget spinner, but more importantly, I want to like order some tungsten off Amazon and make my own.
Yes, you for sure do. Burke also pointed out that there's LED lights in some fidget spinners as well that could explode, I guess. I don't know. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Lisa Schmeiser is the editor-in-chief at the Super Site for Windows. You have a column on The Observer. You can sign up for your newsletter. So what? Who cares? Where's the best place for people to see all your work online?
If you go to twitter.com, the link to So What, Who Cares is in the bio. And I also let people know when a new issue drops. And when I'm on other podcasts or I write other things, I have links in my Twitter stream there too.
Awesome. And you write you write TV stuff too, right?
I do. I write for previously.tv, and I'm open to write for anybody who wants me.
And so I should watch Glow, I guess.
Yes, you should. Okay. It is glorious.
Okay, I just finished Master of None last night. I'm looking for something next. So Glow, I'll try that. And that you can get the whole season on Netflix, right?
Yes.
No, I don't like to wait.
It's bingeable.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, Lisa, it was a pleasure to talk to you again. I hope to talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. That is 23 UTC at twit.tv/live. 2300, I guess is how you say it. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv or leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. If anyone wants to weigh in on the trucking discussion, I would love to hear from you. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can share your thoughts on the stories we discussed in the TNT subreddit. That is technewstoday.reddit.com. And find all the many ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to tweet at me to find out why my voice sounds so crazy, I am at Megan Maroney. And thanks to our technical director, Brian, Burke for helping out in the studio, Kevin for editing the show, and thanks to you for spending so much time talking tech with us today. We'll see you tomorrow.